it is as easy as finding a thought or a set of thoughts that you have mistaken for who you are because of trauma. And when you see the difference between you, like your essence, your energy, that observer, and this mask that you have put on as a result of having to play the game by the rules of the world that was broken and hurtful, it's that easy.
Guys, in today's episode, I'm so excited because by the end of it, you will see yourself in a different light. This is the episode that's going to help you get unstuck and begin to see the truth of who you are and hopefully find your bliss.
Oh, I love that.
I want to welcome to the show Miss Anya Lincoln.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
So, Miss Anya, I'm so glad to have you here today.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
This is going to be a packed episode because this is such a deep conversation about identity. What I'm really curious about is what happened, what was your life like before you really dove deep into this identity work?
Well, my life was always a little bit weird. So I was not weird, but when compared to people that did what they were supposed to, right? Like people that sort of followed the rules, I was always what sometimes is called a contrarian, like, except that I was really nice. So I never had trouble, like in school or in church or growing up or even with my parents. I was always really well liked, but I never followed a path that people said you should do this, you should follow these steps. And I think that came not came, but as a child, right? Like, because we talk about spirituality. I have always had this sense of wonder, connection, magic. Like when I grew up in a Soviet Union, I was born in the Soviet Union. It fell apart when I was 7 years old. We did not have a lot of spirituality around us, so that was not part of the conversation. But just to give you sort of a picture of how I started, when I was 7 and I came to a church for the first time, and I heard people greeting each other, they were all saying, "Holy evening, holy evening." And that's just like a hello. It's not like they're actually saying that this evening is holy. But when I heard it, I was like, oh my God, finally, they're seeing it too. How amazing and holy everything is. So I had that sort of sense of connection. But then very quickly, as I became a teenager and I entered into school and I entered into college and I felt completely out of place. That's why I mentioned being a contrarian, like not really doing what I was supposed to. I could not connect. I felt like I was fish out of water for a really, really long time. So, and going into becoming a mom and getting married and moving to America, the spirituality, that sense was always there, but I felt like I was living in two different worlds until I married the two. And I'll let you interject right now because I can go on forever. But that was
that's beautiful that you married the two.
Yeah.
Now, it has been my assumption, really, that children really are connected spiritually. Like we come into this world connected to who we are and really connected to God and just the beauty and simplicity of everything. But what happens?
Right. It's kind of a forgetting, but not in a sense that something gets erased from our memory, but like in the book that I wrote that we talked about, I often see it as a kind of an iron curtain that goes up, that's made of thoughts and beliefs that we simply copy from the environment that we live in. So one thing about we often, especially like in spiritual traditions, we do talk about children as uh, these beings, right, that are pure and connected, and that know God intrinsically, like inside.
Mm.
But the mind, it belongs to the world. The mind's not trained yet, and so unless the mind either doesn't get conditioned by the environment or gets a chance to mature, right? Getting informed by that innate connection, the mind just gets what the imprints that are available to it from the people that came before. So that's what I mean, I talk about consciousness, right? Like we inherit or we're born into levels of consciousness that our, this world shares, our community shares, and then it's up to us to undo the iron curtain and remember who we are, but now having the mind on board so we could be married, like so God and human can actually uh, be one and the same, or like that there shouldn't, so there's not a separation between who we really are and the kind of a temporary role that we play here that's important and creative, but that we don't, put them in two separate rooms.
Yeah, so our mind is a curtain. Our mind creates this iron curtain that kind of separates us from the consciousness of who we truly are.
Absolutely. And then the thing is, with the mind or consciousness, or so combined with the mind, right? It's it's very powerful. And one thing about mind, or one thing about the way we sort of process experience and create our experience, create thought, is that it's kind of self reinforcing, meaning once somebody forgot who they are and all these other people around them are also buying into the same kind of forgetfulness, it just keeps echoing back until somebody wakes up and says, wait a minute, maybe even though that out there, the world that we created based on forgetting who we are, looks really real. Like there's a lot of proof that things are not great, right? Um, I'm going to step back, and instead of going into the reaction, go into a place that is the pre-thought, that's outside of the world that already exists, including the world of our thinking, right, that creates that iron curtain. And then draw from that place, bring something new in. And we could talk about it in a complicated way like I do, or we could just say that somebody just can tap into love, right, like bring love into this world, which is one and the same, because the way I see love is love is God, love is oneness, love is the connection of all things. And that's where we want to get to, right? If we want to change ourselves, change our world, interrupt a pattern that we're repeating, and so on.
Yeah, and love is like, I see it as pure.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have the mud and the muck of the truths of this world, right? Like the world shows us all this contrast, all this negative, and if the mind attaches to that, it's not really our truth. It's not really that pure love. Like when I started my transformational journey, I began to realize that um, there was a part of me that existed before the trauma,
Mm-hmm.
before the pain, before the beliefs that I created around those events in my life. And I just kept thinking, like, isn't there like an easy button that I can push to reset back to that state of being?
Mm-hmm.
And is that
Um,
kind of like what your work is like, helping people press that easy button and go back to that pure state of love and beingness?
Absolutely. But because I don't lie, in the beginning of the book, I talk about how my one of the biggest uh, dark night of the soul, or my one of the biggest legs of my spiritual journey, um, started with a resolution not to lie to anyone about anything. So I'm not going to tell you that this is going to be easy, but it is one button, right? It is that one thought exists at different levels of our awareness, at different levels of consciousness. So it's not like you might only have to find that one thought, but in any given situation, it is as easy as finding a thought or a set of thoughts that you have mistaken for who you are because of trauma. And when you see the difference between you, like your essence, your energy, that observer, and this mask that you have put on as a result of having to play the game by the rules of the world that was broken and hurtful, it's that easy. I guess the only thing, if I wanted to add something about the ease of it, right? Seeing it actually is very fast and easy. It's a little scary to move through that iron curtain, because the iron curtain didn't just get erected for its own sake. It was not only an imprint from the world, but it was also a defense mechanism. So if one is willing to sit with the discomfort, right, and actually uh, follow an inquiry, and I found a way to inquire, which I teach people, but you have your own wisdom too, right? Like people, there's not one prescription, but I teach people how to question that curtain and how to see the difference between who you are and those thoughts that you mistake for who you are. And usually they experience release and relief like almost instantly after doing the work. Now, the work part, or the hard part, starts when you begin integrating that new awareness into the world that you live in, because your brain has been conditioned for a really long time. You have certain tracks, right, that your thinking runs through, and those don't get rewired instantly. It takes
Mm.
practice. It takes practice to show up in the new awareness and saying, oh yeah, there's that old thought coming up. Oh, it's pulling me into that old reaction. And normally it doesn't take as long as what people would usually spend in therapy at all. Like it does not take as long, but it does take some, some moments and days that are not as sexy as that beautiful, enlightening insight that happens in the beginning of the work. And then at the, on the back end of it, it's, you just realize you're living with this new sense of ease until it's time to question something else. So
That's beautiful. Now let's pause right here. Yeah, so these thoughts that we have that are kind of controlling our lives and showing up as patterns in our lives. Can you give me some examples of like what people may be experiencing that may be thought patterns that are holding them back from being their true self?
absolutely. But before I do that, can I actually tell your listeners and talk about then one easy button that anybody can press right now without any work or
Yes,
anything, right?
please.
Quiet it up at the end, or it doesn't take you all the way. I found it super helpful in terms of an easy button. And all it is just understanding that your experience, right now, is created via your thinking, and that your thoughts, the thoughts that you're aware of right now, are not reality. They are at best a Polaroid picture, right?
I,
So one of the things before you do any kind of work, right, any kind of inner work, any kind of therapy, there's a really useful understanding that one can sort of embrace, and that is that our whole experience Like everything that you're experiencing right now is getting experienced through your thinking. And why this is an easy button, why it's important, is because the kind of bliss and inner peace that is available to you, if you just understand that it is your attention that is waking up your thoughts. Your thoughts are inspired by reality, inspired by the events, inspired by all kinds of things happening, but they are not literally connected or chained to what's happening out there. And if you understand that inside of you, there is a mechanism where there's an attention, right? An attention is focusing on a thought. And all it is just understanding that your experience, right now, is created via your thinking. And that your thoughts, the thoughts that you're aware of right now, are not reality. They are at best a Polaroid picture, right? For example, if I just told you right now, let's focus on that Greek restaurant in Monroe that is like on the main drag, right? Right? You pictured it, right? And so now that
Mm-hmm.
we're going to be talking about insights, you'll forget it. That is how the mind works. And if we understand that it's that attention that brings the thought to life, which is also super important to understanding of identity work, and that the attention, if shifted to a place inside of us that is quiet or that is sort of beyond thought, you can actually train your mind to get quiet. And that is the easiest of all easy buttons because it flushes like 80% of all of your stress and anxiety instantly. Now, my work comes on board, and when it comes to somebody saying, well, you know what, I know I can now have control of my mind, not control of my mind, but in a sense, I have a mastery over this sort of attention, and I can allow my mind to get quiet because I know all of this is thinking. This is not inside of my head. It's not like that atlas holding up the sky. It's just thoughts. And the thoughts settled, just like the thought about the Greek restaurant in Monroe just went away. It's what our attention holds as important, and we can actually just release any thought. That's the easiest of all buttons. But then my work, and that's the reason I continued and left the philosophy that I initially practiced or learned right when I in coaching school and started digging deeper, is because I noticed that certain people's patterns kept repeating anyway, even though they would come into this blissful state and they would go to yoga or they would meditate, and it would really help them. And it would open them up to insight because the quieter your mind, the more can come in. You can hear your intuition. I'm sure you've experienced that, right? Or an
Yes.
insight, meaning like new thought comes in. And all of that is super helpful. However, people kept bumping up against the same trigger or the same anxiety, and that didn't quite budge as fast. Also, what did not budge is patterns because they saw patterns as happening out there. And that's where I
Mm.
started digging deeper and saying, what if it's actually the same in terms of consciousness holding a thought, except this thought, whatever we're looking for, is being held so deeply we can't quite get to it with our conscious thinking.
We don't even realize it's there sometimes.
Exactly. And then another thing that I said, what if about? What if I and you and anybody else, like we are actually active creators of our reality and are connected to our reality as if it's like, sometimes I say it's a spider web, it's a matrix, or any kind of thing that you can imagine, or a tapestry of relationships and connections. And that might explain why no matter where I go, no matter what dating app I join, I meet the same guy. Like that,
Right.
right? And I mean, to bring it back to earth,
Yeah.
you go to any kind of job, that you join, I can guarantee you, and I'm not psychic, that you're going to meet the same boss that you met in the previous work. Why? If your consciousness hasn't shifted for uh, for whatever reason, like if you haven't done any kind of um, either conscious inquiry or something in your life moved you to a different level of awareness, it just keeps happening. It just the bodies change, but the characters are the same. The game is the same. And
Yeah.
so yeah, so that was identity work, and that's exactly like that's going
So
deeper.
the big question is then, like, I mean, we can get to these, like, the fluffy layers, but how do you get to those deeper layers that you don't realize is creating your reality because it's so deep, it's so ingrained into you, you don't even know it's a thing.
Exactly. So you start looking a little bit wider. So you raise yourself up as if you are looking at, say, planet Earth from a spaceship, right? As opposed to looking at a street on in an actual town. And what I found, and I teach you how to do this in the book, is looking at the pattern that continues unfolding,
Mm.
not as, well, I'm playing this role and you are against me, but that I am including all of the ingredients of the pattern in my reality. So the good and the bad, the hero and the enemy are all playing out a certain conflict. So we're not, if I am dating a person, back to dating, right? So because people find it relatable, if I am dating a person that is, say, continues rejecting me, if I am looking at the roles, I go to a psychologist and I might say, help me figure out how to deal with rejection or how to get them not to reject me. I might even say to myself, against the advice of psychologists, that I'm going to become somebody who cannot be rejected. I will become excellent in every single way. So I'm just the most lovable person. But with identity work, I say to myself, okay, I'm playing the role of me, but I'm also including the person that is rejecting me in my reality because I want them to be there. So my consciousness, for some reason, desires this challenge, not to say that, oh, you're punishing yourself or you're creating this bad thing, but we're looking at like the grand intention. Like if your life story was about working out a flaw or getting rid of something, what would it be? And we just get curious. My very first inquiry, before identity work got really detailed and deep, because I've practiced it, for a long time, for years after the initial seeing, was simply sitting at my kitchen table, looking at my relationships, looking at places where I agree or have agreed in the past to things that I didn't want to do in exchange for something. That
Mm-hmm.
that's a big question of identity work. Where are you betraying your integrity because you're hoping to secure something? You're giving up something of value to get something back. Now, uh, that would point us to a place that where one believes that they're missing something. You see, like if you, for example, like me, felt like you could not make money, and I believed I could find a man that needs help that man, and then the man will help me back. I never felt that I had a direct connection to my own value, into that value being translated into the world.
And that your
So,
value was where your wealth would come from.
exactly. And
You had to
so,
give something away to receive what you thought you were missing.
absolutely. So, I'm sitting at my kitchen table, raising myself up as if I am in a spaceship looking at Earth that is Anya and saying, okay, what's happening? Where is Anya betraying herself? And what is she getting in return? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I looked at my ex husband and I said, well, why is he in that relationship? What does he believe he doesn't have? And I just made a theory. I'm not my ex husband. That's his own business, right? But to me, it became obvious that all people participating in patterns were exchanging something because of a deep belief that they were disconnected from something on the inside. And so suddenly, the pattern isn't you against me. We're all in this together. At least in my reality, I'm not fighting with the narcissist and with the rejecter and with the person who is manipulating me. I'm like, on some deep level, this is my reality. And
Yeah.
it's going to continue spitting out the same code until I change something. And the way I discover it, right, is just by looking at the story reality is telling me,
Yeah.
right? Or for example, another example,
Yeah.
like of a belief that um, that could be present. For example, if you look at somebody's life, which is also in the book, as if it was a movie, and the exercises that we do is you try to give these actors instructions on how to play different characters in your life, including you. And then you sit back, you imagine watching your own life or your pattern unfold on the silver screen, and you're trying to understand if this movie was trying to tell us something about this character, what would it be? And people sometimes get in their head and they're like, um, get really, really positive, but we don't want to be too positive because we're trying to solve a pattern. We're trying to figure out why you don't have any money or why you don't, have success in this area or no love in your life. And we have questions, there's a lot of questions we ask, but they're mostly all about like, what are you trying to tell us? And a big one for people is that if I stop suffering, nobody is going to see me,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
Like things
That
like
that
that.
was that was a big one for me because I had so much identity wrapped around my suffering. I would almost, when I'd introduce myself to a new person, I would almost even lead with the suffering. Within a few minutes of speaking to them, I would somehow work that into the conversation. And it wasn't until in my 50s I realized that I was using that, my suffering, as value for myself,
Hmm.
which is really screwed up.
Yes, or absolutely. Or for example, another thing that I have seen it's all related, really. But somebody, I'm thinking of this person whose parents or his mother did not see him at all, and his identity got formed around not being seen. So in all of his relationships, he would find somebody who could potentially see him, then create so much noise, so much drama, and so much conflict that it was impossible to see him. And he also gained a ton of weight, right? To remain hidden. And then he set it up as an obstacle for the person he was in relationship with and for the whole world, because
Yeah.
his identity had this constant need of being seen, not just seen once, because that's your true self. Your true self, if it wants something in the world, right? I want you to see me. You saw me, I'm happy, and I move on. Or I am hungry, I eat this, I'm satisfied until I'm hungry again. Identity doesn't work like that. For the identity to be completely satisfied or healed, right? Because this is why people have this perpetual healing thing. It actually has to go away, it has to dissolve. But identity has become you. It doesn't
Mhm.
want to go away. It feels like if it gives up that last strand of suffering, you'll disappear. That's what we call in spiritual circles ego death. That's why it's so difficult or so convincing to stay in the old box and the old reality, because to leave the old reality, you have to give up not only what's bad about the old reality, but what you have gotten out of the old reality, right? Including your sense of being real. You don't know who
Mm.
you are outside of this.
It
If
feels real.
exactly,
Like
if
this fake identity, this wall that we create around ourselves and believe it to be true just feels so real. So
absolutely.
how so then like how do you get rid of it? Like how do you replace it?
So
Does it need to be replaced?
no, no, no. It does not need to be replaced, and that's like a common misunderstanding,
Okay.
because you're still identifying with your mind. If you need to replace one thought with another, it's still an identity.
Mm,
There's no good or even bad identities. There's only forgetting that you are not the identity. It's like putting on a costume, an appropriate costume for whatever role you're playing. I'm a mom, I'm whatever. But then if you have gotten identified with something like the man I was talking about, who I nobody knows who I am or nobody can see me, if he was theoretically to take on a new identity, everybody can see me. That is also something that you have to constantly manage and maintain, and you're still not living in the realization of who you really are. So you're not really free. So, but because the mind really is afraid to let go, a lot of people attempt to replace bad thoughts with good thoughts, like their old identity with the new identity. And they don't succeed at crossing that threshold.
mm,
The way you do it is you get comfortable with discomfort, and the
mm,
discomfort that you're going to experience is going to become big in the moment when you refuse to satisfy the identity's requirement. Sometimes I call the identity the hungry ghost. Like if that, say a needy identity or an identity of a victim. For example, let's take suffering, right? If you are at a dinner party and normally you would talk about, oh, I just had like this surgery and my daughter's not listening to me and my ex-husband, he's such an ass, or I'm sorry, he's so like, right, and you're suffering and everybody's echoing you, right? The identity is getting fed.
yeah.
But then you do some inner work and you feel the desire to bring the suffering to the front, and you're like, I'm not going to do that, like that. I could see that I've been leaning on that, and there's a sense of self tied to that. And say everybody else is still talking about their suffering, they're commiserating, and you're sitting there and you're alone. You start feeling anxious because because I this suffering isn't just suffering; it's belonging, right? It is connection. It is validation of who you are. You start feeling anxiety, and in identity work, you don't have to do this at the dinner party. You could actually put on headphones or read it or journal it in the privacy of your own home, imagining situations that could be triggering to you. And you can tease out that anxiety that rises when you don't feed the little ego, right, or identity that sits here. And after it gets really mad and really hungry, it's going to tell you who it is. Like, Anya, why, if you were in a world where you weren't allowed to tell anyone about your suffering, what would happen to you? And you just continue asking yourself questions without going out into the world and satisfying the discomfort. And soon the discomfort is going to speak, and it's going to say something like, I'm not real unless other people validate me. I am separate from God. I cannot drop suffering because I will be all alone, because suffering is what connects me to the world. Identity is usually kind of like an I am statement about your nature, like who you
Mm,
are. It usually has nothing to do with the situation that you're dealing with. Like your pattern could be about money, but your identity could be about I don't I have no permission to know my own value. Like
mm-hmm.
I know my value, but I can't have access to it unless you see value in me, for example. And there's usually some rules attached to it, like how it's supposed to work,
Yes.
right?
Especially
And
with money.
especially with money. And
Mm-hmm.
interesting that this is, I say this all the time, is that if you start working with money, it's going to lead you to the same place probably as when you start working on relationships. It's all tied. Like for me, it was tied in a huge way. Like I thought I had issues with money, but I actually had this very interesting layer of my own uh, consciousness that affected my money, that believed there could only be one person that is allowed to have desire in the room. I'll explain. I was raised in, my dad was very beautiful, but also incredibly narcissistic, right? Not because of his faults or because he was evil, because the way he was raised, he was kind of a little bit on the spectrum, and a, all, he was very traumatized. But growing up in that environment made me believe, and that's how it was for real, that only his opinion or his desire mattered.
So the one person in the room.
But if I, so when I grow up in my subconscious mind, later on I entangled and I was like, whoa, so does it mean that if I start asserting my value and asserting my opinion and asserting my desire, then I become the narcissist that hurt me. I become that person that's taking up the stage. And I never wanted to do that. So I stayed back. Now,
Yeah.
when I was writing, or when I was in my cave or in my art studio, because I was a professional artist before I started doing spiritual work, I thrived. I did fine because there was only one person in the room. When it came to bringing my work to the world, and I would see a person like you or a person that is a client, I would instantly shut down. I would have anxiety attacks. I couldn't understand why. I would be like, just read the book. Don't bother me. Because I thought it was my personality. Now, I'm still a cave dweller, right? Like I am one of those mystical thinkers that can sit on the mountain, but I was not free in my cave. I was avoiding having to either give you all the attention or being you. That was hurtful. Not you, but my dad, right? Or whoever else. But then I realized, like, oh my God, that's a thought construct that was so
Yeah.
deeply tied to who I was. And that is not true. Like, it's not true at all. It's an illusion based on the fact that, first of all, that we're separate from one another. Like, there was a lot of conclusions coming from the inside. And after I saw that, and this is how it usually works, like, after I saw that I was identified with the pain of the person that was struggling with an impossible choice. Do I become the abuser or do I become invisible, or the abused, so to speak? And when I saw that neither one of those options needed to be explored because this is all made up. The next interaction I had with a human being, I stayed in my lane. And interestingly, it was like I would say something and they would say something. I could hear them instead of hearing my anxiety in the presence of them.
Yeah.
It became so easy to work because instead of operating from like being inside a glass jar of my anxiety because I had to constantly guess what they're thinking, I could just ask them like, how can I help you? And they would say blah blah blah, and and that's it. And it became so simple. And as an added layer of how identity work affects you, once you let go of something this deep, once my consciousness stopped being interested in resolving a conflict between one narcissist or the other, because there could only be narcissists, right? That's how I
Yeah.
saw it. That's all there was available. I stopped drawing those people to me. They just stopped showing up. And that's why I make such a big deal out of saying our consciousness is our reality. It's constantly spitting out either an attempt to repair itself or it's an expression of our creativity. So it's either saying like, oh, I got to fix this so I could be who I am, or I am just doing me in the world and I'm happy and I'm free. And those are
Yeah, consciousness is your reality. I love that, and I have a little testament to that. My husband and I, like, we went through a rough patch, and I just didn't understand it, and I felt like a victim. And in
mm,
a lot of ways, I was. Um, but I know my whole life I've been living out these patterns. I've had steel walls put up because of my father's situation, mother's situation. And so I always felt like I was a broken human. And I'm living out all these patterns, and I didn't understand how damaging it was to my relationships. One day, I just decided that I was going to put myself in a little bubble, and I was going to work on me, and I was going to ignore all the noise.
that's
I was going to
beautiful.
I was just going to, if he was pitching a fit, I wasn't going to respond. It was like I was taking my identity out of that, because in the past, it would be, I'm not going to let him get away with that. I'm not that kind of person that's just going to roll over and let somebody speak to me that way. Right? Like, we take in whatever we think to be true about ourselves, we act on those things. So I had to put myself in this little bubble where I did some of the things that you're talking about and that you've spoken about in your book. And asking questions I cannot tell you how powerful asking questions is. Um, and just sitting with yourself, sitting with silence, unpacking all the layers, asking, why is this true? Where is it coming from? All the things. Well, the more I healed, the more my husband was able to love me. And the damaging behaviors that he had before just vanished.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like you don't get what you wish for. Like, I could wish for love all day long. I could wish for peace all day long. We get what our patterns, like, it's a signature. It's like an energy signature in our patterns, and we get what those patterns are.
Exactly. And that's a beauty of it because our mind says, oh, I wish we had, like you said, peace or love, right? Whatever is the pot of gold at the end of that imagined rainbow, right? Like if I just get him to change, then I'll have peace. Or if I wish I could have peace now without changing anything. But our consciousness is so beautiful. It wants us to remember our true nature, and it's not letting us off the hook until we give up what we bring, where we've forgotten who we are. And like you said, it's amazing how people you are connected to, and you're connected to everyone, but especially your loved ones, your children, right? How, like a tide, it begins lifting all boats. It's amazing that one person's transformation actually, it either in like literally inspires or energetically lifts all of the relationships. And I have experienced
Yeah.
it so much, and this is why, and I think what you said actually is very important to highlight, that there's a difference between thinking like a victim, like this has happened, I'm what do you mean, like I'm just going to let them walk all over me, or I'm going to let them speak to me that way, versus choosing to tap into a place that's wise, that's beyond the reaction. And it does not mean making the bad behavior of another okay. It means seeing deeper than that in ourselves, and in what's available in a situation. I had this example with my teenager just the other day. Like, she was overwhelmed, and but because she was overwhelmed, she started being a little bratty with me. And she said something that, as a mom, if you just overheard me, I should have probably corrected and said, don't you speak to me like. But in that moment, I heard my wisdom that there would be absolutely no benefit to reacting to that. It would take a conversation and keep it on the level that I didn't want to remain at anyway. So I'm just going to go deeper to where I want to be. And like you know, you were shifting into love, right? Yourself. And that's where they started meeting you.
Yeah.
And it's an amazing thing to see that it's not about rolling over. It's not about making bad behavior okay, but it's saying, look, I like the word that you use, like the fluffy layer. It's kind of a fluffy layer. And you, if it's necessary, sometimes from that wise place you can say, no, this is a line, like, but you're saying it from inside yourself. You're not pushing them away, you're not punishing them for whatever they're doing. And an interesting thing about patterns, and this is one thing that it's really hard, especially for people who have been hurt, to 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 embrace. They think that the blame, right, has to be either on one side or the other side. And if I take on ownership of my reality, it means I'm taking responsibility for everything bad that's happening in it. No, like, it's very likely that whatever pattern is happening, and if you are being uh, hurt or not treated right, if you're suffering, if there's any component of that victim energy playing out there, you're probably very likely experiencing very real bad things. So
Mhm.
it's not made up. The question is just, when you see it from a bigger side, you see that all parties are unconscious in one way or another. They might have chosen different things to do with their unconsciousness. I might be quietly manipulative and you might be yelling and hurling insights at me, but we both have forgotten who we are. And
Mhm.
it's not about excusing your, like the fact that you threw a frying pan at me and I just simply sat here and judged you. Like, I'm better. I am morally more on a higher ground. It's seeing that all of what's happening is at the level of consciousness that I don't want to be at anymore.
Mhm.
I'm ready to go beyond that. And that's what identity work is taking your side, your part in the game, questioning your part without taking on the blame for everybody, but
Right.
saying, but taking ownership, not responsibility, but ownership. This is my world, and you're part of this world. You're part of this tapestry. Now, I need to figure out what keeps me stuck, what keeps me attached to this reality.
Mm.
And if I undo my side, it you will either go drift into somebody else's reality and you'll do the same thing with, like, if a person is not ready to, go with you, right, they might move away and find another person to satisfy their trauma with. But often people who are connected to us, like your husband, they're ready, they're right there, if they want to love you, they want to be in that beautiful space with you.
Yeah, now looking back on it, I can see where my being trapped in my false identities was robbing him from the chance to truly love me,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And, but there's got a lot of fear around shifting identity. Like we are really stuck in these things. What's some advice that you can give people to help them through that fear of shifting their identity and really taking a look at who they are?
Well, I think the biggest thing is to practice staying in the present. And I know that this is kind of a, you know, maybe a statement that doesn't mean a whole lot to people. But
It's
if you
become a
really,
little cliche, huh?
it's become
Right.
cliche, right? It's overused. But it's so important when you are making a shift, not just out of, little behavior here and there, but out of like a whole way of being, is to learn to sit with the discomfort, understanding that the discomfort is coming from your thinking,
Yeah.
and not make up any story beyond what's happening in the now. For example, sometimes, and I have actually been through this, I had a financial crisis that lasted for about 2 years. And this was already after I've written the book.
Okay.
And which I was thinking, shouldn't this be better by now? But I had
I'm an
to,
author. I'm supposed to be good, right?
but I knew that this work worked. I knew it got me
Yeah.
out of dark places. I knew it helped so many people. Like, so I was like, okay, if I'm facing this, I'm just going to go all in. The point is, this was around money and finances, and everything was just crashing down. And I had this dramatic moment of having run out of money so completely. I had $70 left to my name, not to credit cards, no lines of credit, nothing. $70. And at that point, my partner Will, who are still, so I have this soulmate relationship, but we separated households because there were some difficulty. Anyway, there were some important things happening, and we had to separate our economies and our household. And he wasn't doing as great either. But I was sitting with Will because we talk about everything and we talk all the time. And I said, Will, I've been working so hard and I've been trying. I've run out of money completely. My rent is due, my electric bill is due. There's no money coming in, and I literally have $70 left. I started, what do I do? And then I had this idea to start driving DoorDash, delivering food. And you'd think this was the worst moment. The worst moment wasn't that. The worst moment when I went down to $10 in my bank account to my name, and I was delivering food, and I needed to get gas, and I had $10. And I bought $5 worth of gas, and I made the next delivery. And then I made $5 on the next delivery. But that was the example of staying in the present. My mind was going crazy. It was saying, Anya, first of all, how embarrassing. Somebody's going to see you from this picture and is going to say, what are you, like, is this you, lady? You're full of, you know, like,
Now give
and
me my McDonald's.
yeah. And then exactly. And then my mind was like, I had this anxiety. My mind was taking me out of the present so hard. It was saying, you're one nail in the tire away from homelessness. You're one accident away from being on the street. I'm opening my phone, and email comes in. Your account, your Entergy account, electric account has been scheduled for disconnect. And I said, right now, I am in the car. It's drivable. My electricity hasn't disconnected yet. And the point is, and how it connects to identity work, is you continue staying connected to the guidance that's beyond the reaction to the world that you live in, to the old,
Mm,
right? And you have to take care of what comes in at the moment. That kind of response is fine. But the mind that is constantly thinking, you should be doing something, that's reaction. And that reaction is operating based on the old assumptions about who you are.
yes.
And then I dropped into the present and basically made the circle of the harder the situation, the scarier the situation as you're shifting, the circle of your attention has to be smaller. Of course,
Yes.
right? You have to you have to make it smaller and smaller and smaller. And so I basically had to be just like, okay, get in the car, go to the next delivery, smile, get a good tip, eat some peanuts at Five Guys, like just go, it was so bad,
That's
but
a good idea, though.
it was
Like,
great. That's why I was like, I hope I get a Five Guys because I can get some free peanuts and some water. And that was my dinner. But what I want to say is that because I was able to stay grounded and present as I'm driving, and this is a little bit compressed, right? This stretched into weeks and months, but I continued staying present, continued staying connected. And I thought, written this brilliant book. People who read it email me from Africa, from all these continents saying, you've changed my life. Why am I eating peanuts at Five Guys?
yeah.
And then again, that would, if I spend too long thinking about that, that would take me into the victimhood, right? Like, why, woe is me.
So, what did you discover about yourself that you were playing out in that reality?
Okay, so there were several insights, right, including not being connected to my value, right, not knowing where my value was, and that my
Mm-hmm.
value was determined and defined by others, um, that I kept letting go of. And then when I started moving in life, like I said, in that little quarter-size space of present, I think I was driving a pizza somewhere, and suddenly I had this thought, try TikTok again. Go. And I'm like, nah, I hate TikTok. I hate social media, But I recorded a video and about an identity work inquiry I did. It was very badly recorded. It was not edited. I said I had a dream, and I got triggered by a dream, and this is how I worked through it. It got 30,000 views right away.
Wow.
And I was like, okay. And this book was on my table just as I'm talking, because I talk about it. And somebody said, what's this book? And I said, well, this is the book. This is what I'm talking about. This is the identity work. And they're like, why isn't it tagged in your video? And I'm like, how do you tag a book in your video, in my video? I go to TikTok, open the TikTok shop, go through the motions. I had everything I needed. And suddenly, by the end of that year, I sold more books than in the previous 3 years on Amazon and everywhere combined. I've paid all of my bills solely through um, book sales. My partner's practice, coaching practice, filled to 20 clients a week. All
It's
because,
amazing.
and, uh, but it came from trusting that no matter what's happening, right? And for those who are religious, going through the valley of the shadow of death, right? Like you I just like you just keep going. You keep putting
Yeah.
one foot in front of another, and then that place that is connected to the place that isn't afraid to die, isn't afraid for the electricity to get disconnected, uh, is feeding you guidance,
Yeah.
and that's all it is.
Right. And that's what I was about to mention is that connecting to the present and connecting to that place almost that's not attached to any identity. It's just the I am of who you are.
Hmm.
It's also the place where these brilliant nuggets of information, infinite possibilities can come to you, right?
Exactly, exactly. And like the thing about identity that people don't understand, they think that you are not supposed to be human or like want human things like safety or for example, when we take things to the extreme and we say, well, but my body can die. How can I not be afraid or be identified? I mean, how can I not be afraid of death?
Right,
But if you look at, say, pilots who are keeping cool until they land a plane, or people who have a gun pointed at them and they're still able to negotiate, you know, um, you actually can get to a place where you are in the body, but you are not identified with the body. So there's an experience of the body. And if there's a threat to the body, you experience it as a threat and you're not going to go like jump off a bridge. But
right,
there's a part in you that is not identified with anything that can be threatened by anything that is created. It's like I talk a lot about the creator or that for oneness, right? And the world of roles and created things, including thought. Only a thought can be threatened by another thought. But if I am not identified with anything that is made that is a form, there's a part of my awareness that's always free. There's a
hmm,
part of my awareness that has a door open to the field of all possibilities. So the insight just floods in. And then it informs the creation here. Because this I think that this world is our art project. I think it's a creative project. I think our consciousness is here to create and not just sort of experience suffering and leave and then get a reward on the other side. It's This is where we are expressing our creative selves, our creativity, and uh like that's the point, like that's the point of our
yeah,
of our existence.
and I believe that would be a good clue for someone that maybe is curious, like, am I stuck? Am I living through the lens of these false identities that I've picked up along the way? Is to ask yourself, is there something in me that wants to do something big? Is there
Yeah.
something in me that wants to create? And why haven't I done that already? And that
Mm-hmm.
will lead you to maybe the identities that are like little strings holding you back.
that are holding you back. Absolutely. Because like you actually said, what a lot of people say, well, am I stuck, or does life just suck? Is it just like
Right.
and and another big idea that I say a lot, and it's in the book, is that, yeah, this is reality. This is reality in its current limits. But it's not the only reality that is available. And so if you're even asking a question, am I stuck, or is life just like that? You're stuck, you
You're
know?
stuck.
Because
That's your clue.
that's your clue. Like, if you were not stuck, you would be just having fun and moving forward. Um and if you see a light or a reality construct or a situation that says, um, there's no further way for you to move forward because life just works that way, and you feel, maybe a sense of, like, not dejection, but like despair or sadness, or like, just like, like, that's life. um there's still a way to move forward, even if the what you are moving what you are up against is so big and so complicated and shared by so many people. Because what, again, another image that I really, really love is that if reality is a box, right, and we often think of ourselves as, like a little person inside the box, you know limited reality, but you are actually the fourth wall of the room. So the three
Hmm.
walls might be totally solid and in control of other people. When we talk about big things, like people talk about politics, or political systems, or society, or patriarchy, big, big, big
Whatever it
things.
is that's boxing you
Mhm.
in, right?
And they're saying, well, I understand that your little belief about money and DoorDash, that I kind of get. Although, yeah, that was pretty scary. But patriarchy, or but that's big. That's so big and solid that, I'm not even going to try going
right.
a different way. But if you understand that, as far as your consciousness is concerned, it has included these concepts. It's sort of living in this world. So whatever, just like in Lion King, I don't know if your kids watched it, but everything the light touches, Simba, this is your kingdom. Everything your thought touches is your reality. And
Yeah.
if what your thought is going out, right, in your mind's eye, your thought is going out and bouncing off these walls of not possible, not da 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 da. If you're going to try to fix that out there, you may succeed, you may not, but it's not going to change the box. But if you look here at the fourth wall, at the wall that you are, it doesn't matter how big the Goliath is. You are it, you can The door is inside of you, not inside of them. They don't need to change for you to open up to oneness, and come up with an idea that's going to change your world. And then when your world begins changing, your reality transforming from the inside out, first of all, you stop having this dependent relationship with these big structures. They still exist. We're not ignoring them, but you're beginning to act outside of them. And then
Yeah.
you become the center of transformation.
And one thing that I've noticed also through my own story is that when you work on your wall, like the one that you have control over, which is your thoughts, your identities, and you say, bring in light, when you come back to truth, your light becomes stronger. And when
Mm-hmm.
your light becomes stronger, it almost dissolves the other walls.
Ah, yes.
Like, I mean, they're still out there because they're still part of other people's constructs and part of their walls, but they're not necessarily walls for you anymore.
Exactly. That's brilliant. Yeah. I agree with that. And then the people who come in contact with you, most most of us want to be free. So if
Yeah,
they see a free person, even if I'm holding so tightly to something that is keeping me hostage, but if I see you and you've let it go, even if I don't want to admit it, I'm looking. I want to know how you did it.
yeah,
Or I'm even saying to myself, it's possible. Look at her, like she let it go.
yeah,
And so that's how we change the world. It looks like it's too little, right? Like, oh, it's just one little me. If I change
yeah.
myself instead of changing the system of whatever people don't like, out there, that nothing is going to happen. But that's not true.
Yeah, this is exactly the structure of bliss for me. Being love is success and service. One thing that I noticed is that most people work backwards.
Mm.
Most people, eh, I've, everyone that I've spoken to wants some sort of success and wants to serve others. This is a truth. And most of us give ourselves away serving with our broken vessels, losing more water than we can pour out to give others because we have these cracks from our identities. And what I found to be true is that when you go in the right order and you become love, you become that truth without the everything on the end of an I am statement. I am bad. I am worthless. I
Mm-hmm.
am not enough. All of these, then that I am, which is love, creates your success, your purpose, your mission, your soul's mission for this life on earth. And that success will be your service to others. I believe
Absolutely.
everyone's success that comes from their light will always be a service to others. We don't have to try to serve. You just have to be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I agree wholeheartedly with that. Absolutely. That's beautiful.
Well, Anya, like the nuggets of wisdom that have come from you today are just, I thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. There's a few questions I want to ask from you before we let you go. What is bliss to you?
What is bliss to me?
Yeah, what is bliss to you?
Hmm. So I'm kind of feeling it right now. So I was like, well, what does this feel like? It's just like, like all is well. Like all is as it is, and I am as I am, and there's nowhere to go outside of this moment to get anything to complete me. Like I am intact. I am in integrity, and
That's
and I'm
beautiful.
I'm experiencing this um, this almost like a, I guess, a high maybe, but it doesn't always have to feel intensely happy. It could just be
Yeah,
peaceful, right? Peaceful and,
yeah,
and joyful. Hmm.
beautiful. I love that. Thank you so much. If our listeners had only one thing to take away from this conversation today, what do you hope that is?
You are already okay. Like you are absolutely whole right now. You assume you're not, but you're
Yeah,
okay. And even if you just relaxed into that knowing and just know that you're fine. You're not broken. You're not beyond repair. You're not beyond hope. Um, that's. I think that's probably the most important thing
mm,
because we don't look deeply to uncover those thoughts that we hold on to as identities, because we feel like if we look deep enough, we'll see something awful.
Mhm.
But one thing that I've always known, and maybe this is a gift of grace, I always knew that everything that was disconnected was made up. That since I was a kid. And so that helped me face so many difficult things because I was willing to look until I fell through that layer to a place of love, right? Like
Yeah.
you cannot fall deeper than love. Like there's nothing below you that is an abyss, and if it feels like an abyss, it's made up. There's
Yeah.
there's only love, and you are love, and you're fine. You're not you're not broken.
Yeah. And yeah, a lot of people that have come through and a dark night of a soul, I feel like they say the same thing. Like they always come back to the knowing that I thought I was broken, but I never was.
Yes.
I never was broken,
Hmm.
but we have to let go of that thought that we are. Um, well, Anna, what makes life worth living?
What makes life worth living? Um, that's an interesting question because it does not fit into my current value system at all. Like, um,
We might have
you
to
know,
meditate on that one.
well, no, I think I can answer it, but I think that like life makes life worth living in terms of like if you it's the same thing as identity, same thing as being alive. If I could tell you the cliches like, oh, it's service or it's this, it's that. All of these things are very beautiful expressions of a liberated self, of somebody who is alive, right? If I am alive and I go out there in the world and I see people in need of help, I help them. I serve, right? Because I can't help it. My energy is meeting your energy and we're interacting. And, but I'm not deriving the meaning of my life from that. I'm alive. Like life makes life worth living. And
I
so,
love it.
because why, otherwise, why are we here? And
Yeah.
not to, it's not to make ourselves real or, worth existing by doing stuff. It's the other way around. It all works backwards. And the way I see the attributes of what some people think make up a life worth living
Yeah.
are almost like echoes of somebody who's living a life
Mm.
without
Yeah.
trying to make it worth living, so to speak. I know it's a little confusing, but it's inside out. What I mean is it's secondary, and
Yeah.
it's so much easier that way. But I do think
Yeah.
that the intention of our life here is creativity. I think that our energy is creative. And I think that goes well with the idea of, even in Christianity, like it's all like of a creative God, right? Like, and that's God in you. So
I
I
mean,
do
the
be
first book in the Bible is about creation.
exactly. So I think that your act of being alive will naturally it naturally creates anyway. And
Mhm.
everybody creates, not just creative people. Everyone
Mhm.
creates the world, everyone creates the reality. And uh, the journey of a human being is to liberate that creativity, right? To get out of suffering and to get out of uh, fixing yourself for fixing sake, meaning giving up the identity of brokenness or separation,
Mm.
and then and then being the kind of creator that you are. And I think that's human experience, that in my understanding.
Expression.
Yes, creative expression.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you so much. And how can people get in touch with you, Anna?
So my website, anyalincoln.com, ANYALINCOLN, has my information, and you can reach out. You could also get information about, like, coaching with my partner Will, who uses identity work. He's like a regular coach if you want like weekly sessions. I also do, either events, Zoom calls, sometimes one-on-ones, and you could buy my book there. So everything is on the website, and social
Yeah.
media
And
too. But
find her on TikTok.
TikTok is, yeah, TikTok. You could get a lot of me on TikTok. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you so much, Anna. It was such a blessing to have you here today, and hope to do it again soon.
Yes. Thank you for having me, Becky Renee.